website, proleftpod.com, where you can also contribute to this podcast. There is a PayPal button at our website, or you can mail us a letter and or contribution to the tropical paradise of Springfield, Illinois, P.O. Box 9133, Springfield, Illinois, 62791.
This is the podcast for the week of July 28th, 2023. It's not safe for work.
Recorded live from the Cornfield Resistance, where the Internet Kitties hope Mike Pence is on the debate stage so they can watch the fly on his head again, this time wearing an itty-bitty Trump 2024 hoodie. It's the Professional Left with Driftglass and Blue Gal. Listen to the Professional Left wherever you get your podcasts, on Netroots Radio, or at our web. Everyone hates you, Mike Pence. They tried to kill you, Mike Pence. Don't know why you're running in the same party, but I guess you got no place else to go. So good luck to you, man.
I think he's trying to rewrite history like a lot of them are. He's trying to make a position where his Wikipedia page doesn't start with, you know, I sucked up to Trump for years and years and years, and then his people tried to kill me.
Yeah.
And that's not going to change. It's not going to happen. And he's not going to get a right-wing radio audience back either. So
no, he's not the guy that gets to rewrite conservative history.
Right.
Ben Shapiro is the guy who gets to write new history, and you know,
and Barbie reviews and all those other things. Yeah.
Yeah. And we want to get a little housekeeping. If you hear a whirring and blowing noise in the background, it's because usually for this podcast, hell or high water, we turn the AC off because it does make an interfering noise. Today, it's right around 97 degrees with a heat index of 115. It's going to be 100 or over tomorrow here with a heat index of melting things. It's also really humid. So we're keeping the AC on just for as a matter of survival. So
yeah. And, you know, this is what I think we need to start with. Just
go.
Mental health alert as well, not just a heat alert, but the news on climate change is that this is a climate disaster, not just a climate change where we can, you know, fix things and tweak things and then down the road things will be better. This is happening now, and it's very, very upsetting and paralyzing to have the news be on world destruction events like this. And so what I've been reading this morning is something called, and I'm sure there are people out there who know all about this and they're going to go, Blue Gal, you're so dumb. But I had not been aware of the Stoic philosopher Epictetus before. And I started to read about him. And when I think of the word Stoic, I think of Mr. Spock. You know, I think of someone who turns off their emotions.
I'm going to have to interrupt because, I'm this is how you can tell that this is a dysfunctional marriage. I am quoting Epictetus around the house all the time.
Like, and I don't listen. I just have la 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 la. I gotta go to my prayer breakfast.
Right.
Like Nancy Mace, right?
And I say, you know what Epictetus said about prayer breakfast, and you just slammed the door in my face. And I feel, you know who I feel like? I feel like Ken.
Yes, right. I'm not going to get into all the.
No.
Nancy Mace made some people upset by the fact that at a prayer breakfast, or at least referring to a prayer breakfast, she talked about turning down her fiance for sex. Now, if she marries this man, and apparently they've had premarital sex because she talked about it. This is her third husband.
You know,
it's 2023.
Yeah.
If anyone's upset about Nancy Mace having sex outside of marriage at this point, go look at your own bedroom. You've got other problems. Yeah.
How many wives did King Solomon have? Huh?
How many wives did Donald Trump have? That. What about the porn star hush money? We can go on and on and on.
No, let's go back.
But the real issue with Nancy Mace is that she faked Antifa graffiti on her own house.
Yeah.
You can look up Nancy Mace at Crooks and Liars and read all about that as well. Getting back to climate change, getting back to this horrible hot weather we're having that is clearly the result of man-made burning of carbon, etc., and the paralyzing nature of that. And I just want to talk about this Stoic philosopher who was a slave and learned a lot of important skills while he was a slave, Driftglass.
Yeah.
he I don't know. I was not expecting to go in that direction.
No, but then your brain went that way.
My brain
didn't it?
went there.
Yeah.
Stoicism I always thought of as Mr. Spock, that you're tamping down your emotions,
Right.
and not showing emotions. But that's not what apparently Stoicism is about. Remaining calm in the tragedies and upheavals and horrible things that happen. And there's a lot of talk about Marcus Aurelius, who lived through a 15-year plague.
Yep.
15 years of plague. That's, there have been times in human history.
It's a lot of plague.
Where there's, the Black Death wiped out. What percentage of Europe? A lot.
Third quarter, something. Yeah. No,
Yeah.
And Western civilization is largely an attempt to not repeat that.
Yeah. So we may be going through a time, I think we are going through a time of upheaval. I don't think there's any question about that. Remaining calm. And also, this is what works for me when I start to feel paralyzed by these things, is try to find one thing you can do to help someone else. Try to find one thing you can do that day. What can I do today to make the world a better place for someone else? And stop looking at myself and look outward. Can I give $5 to a donor's choose? $5 is my thing, where, if I see something that upsets me, I'll give $5 to that cause, because that is something I'm capable of doing. If you're listening to this podcast, I don't have to tell you that you are a person within this world that has a great deal of privilege.
Yes.
You have access to the internet. You have the intelligence to understand politics and be interested in it, and have the time to ponder on these things.
And often the time to tell us why we are wrong about things.
Exactly, which is great. We appreciate
That's fine.
Corrections. We appreciate, here's another book you forgot to talk about. Here's another movie you forgot to talk about. We love it when you tell us those things, because it adds to our knowledge and our conversation, and like, oh yeah, we did forget about that movie, or we did, oh yeah, let's check out that book and see what it's about. So, that's helpful to us. Thank you. But try to find someone else to help. Try to find some way. And it can be someone, it can be checking on a neighbor. It can be giving $5 somewhere. But don't, I don't want to say don't get paralyzed, but try to resist the temptation to get paralyzed. That's my goal. And I just wanted to share that.
It's a pity the dinosaurs didn't have Twitter. Just to get the threads about, it's not a problem. It's asteroid, schmasteroid.
Your wife storms out and says, I've got to go to a prayer breakfast. Never mind your needs.
No, just all the asteroid denialism right up until the asteroid hits, and then nobody could have seen it coming after.
Yeah. And we need somebody to fix this for us.
Right. You notice it's getting a little cold around here? Yeah. Getting a little cold around here.
Why won't somebody do something about that?
Right. Without inconveniencing me in any way.
In any way. I don't want to change.
Right. Now, that is, of course, an imperfect analogy, because that's an external event over which the non-sentient species on this earth had no control.
Yeah.
This is man-made. This is something we did. And this is something that if we are willing to take aggressive collective action, we can mitigate. We can't stop it, but we can maybe make it survivable. Maybe you slow it down. Maybe you start getting smart about what we burn, what we throw away, how we use things, how we reuse things. But there is a real need right now for the people who understand how bad this problem is and how bad it's going to get to be given the megaphone to tell the people who are still denying it or still to shut up and sit down. And
the Republican Party has a group of think tanks that have plans that have been published. I don't know why they published them, but I guess for their donors to say, we're going to undo all of this stuff again. Yeah, when we get the White House back, that Paris Accord is going to go away again. We have the power to make sure it goes away again. Don't worry about it.
Yeah. Well,
so there is Gen X and Gen Z and Gen Y and all of us, there is a difference. It makes a difference. To not vote Republican makes a difference.
It does. It does. And let's face it, when you are an oligarchy, you organize the universe so that you're in charge and nothing can hurt you, and everyone else is cannon fodder to achieve goal number one, which is power and untouchability. So if you have the power to buy an island and create an environmental bunker for yourself and 1,000 of your friends, or
a gigantic yacht with a separate yacht for your helicopter,
whatever.
Right.
If you have the power to just muscle and money your way out of climate crisis, you know, get the rubes to keep voting your tax cuts to make it possible for you to escape the crisis you are creating. And when they all are, you know, drowning in Florida because their state is now a tiny archipelago of limestone outcroppings instead of Florida, and wondering where the government is to help them, the oligarchs will be laughing their ass off, living wherever they're living, going, well, you know, they were expendable. The 90% of the human race is expendable for the preservation of the 10. And that's the thinking of people who have a lot of money and who, let's face it, run places like Twitter. They don't really care about the rest of us, and they really, really have the leverage to get what they want, to buy what they want. We did a whole episode on No Fair Remembering stuff about how we got here today just last week. And a big part of it was the original changes to the communication code. We reviewed a documentary called Outfoxed. The changes to the communication code, the way that things were done by wealthy lobbyists in private, changing the rules to give
behind
them
closed doors
extraordinary power. Extraordinary power.
Right.
And you can see it reflected around you now in that Fox is now an unstoppable force. Doesn't matter. $700 million, fuck it. $1 billion, screw it. We'll make it up next, or we'll write it off on our taxes. They created unstoppable propaganda machines that are having their effect. They're doing what they were designed to do, which is get the rubes to support the wealthy in making the country their personal fiefdom. And if it kills off 100 million people, that's just the price of doing business. Maybe the libertarian wise, if they can't survive in Galt's Gulch, maybe it was their own fault. Maybe they were never fit to survive in the first place. Anyway.
Speaking of oligarchs, Driftglass.
Yeah.
One of the biggest oligarchs in this country, Mitch McConnell.
Yeah.
Had a health episode yesterday.
Moment. Yeah, he did.
And I talked with you about this before dinner last night. Sometimes we have to sit down and have long conversations about what we're going to talk about and what the morality of all of this is and how to say things in ways that won't be misinterpreted. And what I bounced off of Driftglass's beautiful head is that I don't want to wish harm on anyone on this podcast. Not only because that's the right thing to do, but because I don't want to be known as someone who does that. And at the same time, when that happened, I was really, really, really not looking forward to Mitch McConnell's funeral and 4 days of hagiography of Mitch McConnell and what a leader he is. Yeah. And, he's controversial and polarizing, but what a great leader of the Republican Party in the Senate. Everyone respected him in the Senate, blah, 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 blah.
Chris Matthews wearing a black armband and talking about what a shrewd politician he was. He was so shrewd. He understood the game. He understands the game.
Controversial, but shrewd. Yes. Just, I don't have the bandwidth for that. I just, no. And I particularly don't, because he's the man who stole SCOTUS so that what we now know is a corrupt cabal of SCOTUS judges could take away my daughter's bodily autonomy.
Yes. And are trying to, openly trying
and continually trying to, and succeeding. And not to mention skinny repeal of Obamacare. That was his thing.
Yeah.
Finding a compromise way to take away my health insurance.
Sure. Keep taking half a loaf and eventually there's no loaf. So, yeah.
This podcast is not safe for work. Fuck that guy.
Yeah, fuck that guy.
Fuck Mitch McConnell.
And fuck his wife, too.
Yep.
I told you.
But
and
not when she's getting ready for a prayer breakfast, Driftglass.
No. Not with that turtle, thing. But I think I mentioned I think I made you laugh, and believe me, it's a golden moment in my day when if I can make Blue Gal laugh.
It is. He's good at that.
All the people out there who were like, who were wishing Mitch McConnell and this and that, and and I harbor some pretty aggressively violent thoughts about
yes,
people,
he does.
things and institutions that I
edited off of the show.
that I choose not to share. If you were to put a microphone on us preparing for the show, you would hear a slightly different me. Very much network kind of rant.
Yeah.
And which large groups of people should be wiped from the face of the earth. But
right.
Instead, I went. So there was lots of people basically wishing Mitch McConnell ill, and oh my God, what if this happened? If this happened, all of which that's valid for your thoughts and valid for your mind. And you know what? If these people who freaked out about Joe Biden tripping over a sandbag are now all bunched up in the panties about the liberals are not being, they don't understand. It was how dare they?
Calling John Fetterman a vegetable for 6 months.
Right. So, no sense trying to reason with them. But I did say to my wife, here's what probably happened. He saw Bonquo's ghost staring at him. And it freaked him right into immobility and silence. And which applies as a joke to both Mitch and his wife.
Yes.
And if you understand where that comes from, you will understand my reference.
Speaking as the granddaughter of a Campbell, I certainly do understand the Scottish play. So.
Yes, you do. Yes. So go look it up. Go look. Come on. I can't Google everything for you people. Okay. Go look up. Go read a goddamn book, for God's sakes. Read a book.
We love you guys. You guys are so smart.
We do.
You guys are so smart.
So today is the day when everybody in the liberal universe is waiting on tenterhooks for indictments.
And we just heard that there's not going to be an indictment announcement today. That was put out.
That's the end of this podcast. So we're done. We're done today.
Well, we're not going to have Bob Seska rule today, where the microsecond that we shut down this podcast and start to edit it, major news breaks.
I don't know. Major news always breaks. Major news is a terrible, terrible military officer who disobeys orders. Yeah. So, but we do try to make this slightly more, I want to say, timeless or non-contextual. It doesn't have to be. It doesn't have to be in context of the news today. We have a news roundup, and we get to that, and that'll be fine. But I occasionally dip back into my archives because occasionally I have to remind myself exactly how far this shit has gone and how far we are from shore. And I went back 12 years ago to our podcast, which has been going on for 13 years, and I wanted to know during the summer of 2011. You remember the summer of 2011, Blue Gal? Sure. It was after the Republicans took the House and the Tea Party and all that shit was at peak crazy. And we were all feeling like the walls were closing in. Yeah. Because nobody was reporting on the fact that the Tea Party were just a bunch of ex-Republicans who really, and the Republican Party was now out and proud racist. They were.
Well, and also something else happened the summer of 2011, Driftglass.
Oh yeah, no. I that's up to you to talk about, darling.
Oh, we got married that summer.
Yeah, we got married that summer. So thank you very much for all of your cards and letters. No, we announced it on the internet, and it was kind of a big deal. But we made a journey to the great state of Minnesota.
Yes, we did.
We took the old rattletrap van. I believe we were depositing some kids into the tender care of their dad.
That's right.
And they came up with us, and there was a time during that period I spent in the hotel room having my hair done up and my face done up. If you're curious as to what that's like, look up on YouTube Ron Swanson and his girlfriend's daughters.
Yep. It's just like that. It was like that.
They weren't painting my shoes red, but run to the bathroom, get the hand lotion, and give me the hand massage.
A hand massage.
I was a massage good. So, which was wonderful, which is adorable, and I had a wonderful time. Fun. And a very fond memory. But we were in the great state of Minnesota, and we decided to record our podcast live from that venue because that was Netroots Nation 12 years ago in the great state of Minnesota. And we were in a conference room right next to what was called the Right Online Conference. And in flyover country. And our podcast notes from that period that specific episode are kind of skimpy, but I boiled them down, and here they are. Number one, I have a distinct feeling that the party has moved on, like the Democratic Party. Democratic Party doesn't give a rat's ass about the Netroots anymore. A few people do, and God bless them. But the point B was there's a noticeable lack of A-listers here. There ain't a lot of political heavyweights who are interested in courting the progressive wing of the party, the online wing of the party, the Netroots people. There were some, and God bless them. Number three, there was virtually zero media. The Netroots in Chicago had 150 media. That's when all the presidential candidates came. I was there. All the Democratic candidates came. They had international press. There was virtually no media there. The only television camera I personally saw was Fox Channel 9, which is great. Just sends the right message. And the difference between this Netroots thing and the CPAC is the location. Things like CPAC. Because nobody outside of DC or New York gave a shit about what goes on out here in the hinterlands at all. So we can move all conferences around to cities that have unions, and I think that's great. It's very inclusive, and that's great. But if you don't want to have political influence, then definitely move your conference out of DC or New York, because unless you're there, they don't care. And that's just an unfortunate fact of geography and cliquishness. Now, meanwhile, 2 blocks away, do you remember what was happening there?
Oh, I definitely remember what was happening there, because I got to see Andrew Breitbart, and I got to see his minions crawling around Netroots Nation, trying to find the bad things happening.
Drunk Andrew Breitbart. Yeah, there was his walrus mustachioed underling, whose name I forget, from the Chicagoland area, who I used to write up a lot. There was John Fund and a bunch of other goons of his walking around taking down the titles of conferences. Now, mind you, this is not an accident. Andrew Breitbart's Right Online conference had been counter-programming Netroots for 4 years, very specifically to make sure that Netroots didn't get a media weekend to itself. It was absolutely imperative. And this is good tactics. If you have the money for it, just put something right up against your opponent's thing and make a bigger and louder noise so that you become the story. Now, Right Online, it turns out, was 3 times cheaper to attend than Netroots. Can you guess why?
I would guess that Richard Mellon Scaife or some other billionaire underwrote the whole thing.
You are very close. This is from an Atlantic article from 2011 from a former colleague of yours, I think.
Yeah.
Tina Dupuy. Quote, sponsored by the Americans for Prosperity Foundation.
Yeah.
Right Online benefits from the foundation's annual budget of $10 million, overseen by board chairman David Koch of Koch Industries fame. Netroots filings to the IRS show a budget of less than $1 million. In short, the foundation putting on Right Online has more than 10 times the cash of the liberal Tweeples 2 blocks away, making it easier to attend. And the whole reason, this is not the main conference. CPAC and all those other dozens and dozens of conferences and projects they have, those are their main thing. This is just something Andrew Breitbart and the Kochs did to fuck with liberals.
Right. No, this was just to be a fly in the ointment and make sure that they right wing got both sides' attention during the one major liberal conference. Yeah.
So imagine at an NRA conference, if, I don't know, an imaginary liberal billionaire spent a shit ton of money to bring 5,000 people in to blast Bruce Springsteen music at 120 decibels through the doors of their conference and refuse to let them get a word in edgewise and just drive them crazy. And then every time they move, that's how much money the right has and had just to screw with liberals, not to spend, not on their own conferences, not on their own think tanks, etc. This is just fuck with liberal money. And they have, in this case, 10 times more than we had just to put on a conference of activists to try to get our act together and get our politics together. Now, this is continuing from the article. Friday afternoon on the first day of Right Online, right-wing agitator Breitbart marched the block and a half to Netroots Nation in the sweltering heat with what he called an entourage. Some were left-wing bloggers there to record his annual BlogCon stunt. Yes, he's done this before at Netroots with the same result. He shows up at the liberal gathering and cameras are put in his face. There's yelling. it's put on YouTube. And the low key of right online goes back to his conference being the undeserving victim of hippie hatred. As Slate reporter Dave Weigel, who I believe was the only fucking reporter there, said to me the moment the news broke, every conference has to have a Breitbart moment. The last one that didn't was CPAC 2009. This is what was starting to happen in 2010, 11, 12. Well, let me continue with the article. Two staple speakers every year at Right Online are Andrew Breitbart and his equally incensed blogger colleague, Michelle Malkin. Remember her? Remember Michelle Malkin? Mm-hmm. It sets the tone. Provocateur James O'Keefe was celebrated by the crowd during his speech on Friday afternoon. His talk was curiously titled The Left Exposed, where investigative reporting meets online activism. It should be noted the 27-year-old is on probation for his antics. Herman Cain was invited to speak, along with two local Republicans hoping to secure the GOP presidential nomination for 2012, Representative Michelle Bachmann and former Governor Tim Pawlenty.
Teepaw!
Teepaw, your boy Teepaw. Most tellingly, there's what looks like a shrine to Sarah Palin. You think the gold statue of Donald Trump was unique? No. A 5-foot-tall painting of the governor in the hallway of the event space. The documentary about her was screened for attendees Friday night, but the media superstar herself was not on the list of speakers, unquote. Again, this is not a conference to do activism. It's not a conference to get your stuff together. It's just to screw with you and me, Blue Gal. And just to lend a little context to what was going on in 2011, I have cracked open the vaults and gone down into the basement and summoned up a copy of Hardball with Chris Matthews, June of 2011, just about the time that the conference was going on. First, there's a quote from a guy named Newt Gingrich, who was listed as a presidential candidate. And here's Newt Gingrich's quote from that period in time. This is the core of my argument with Barack Obama. He is a natural, secular European socialist. He believes in big government. He believes in centralized power. He believes he, as a politician, knows more than we do. And he should help us redesign our lives by letting him and his bureaucrats something for us. It is the opposite of freedom. So, this didn't just come out of left field. Then there's a progressive activists are out complaining that the president has lost their support. Yes, progressives have deserted Barack Obama, left him, etc., except a NBC poll at the time shows left of center in this country is solidly for Obama. Then there's a guy named Chris Christie, and it's being teased this way. And wait till you see Chris Christie's biting response to someone who wondered why the governor of New Jersey, him, sends his kids to a private Catholic school. You don't hear this from guys who are actually running for president. Fun stuff. Then there's the Wiener scandal. Remember the Wiener scandal?
Yes, I do.
And on like that. There's just a whole bunch of the idea that Barack Obama was the most pro-gay agenda president in our lifetime. I believe Michelle Goldberg was saying this on this panel. And that maybe, just maybe, if we're all very lucky, within a few years, New York State might legalize gay marriage.
Wow.
That's where things stood in 2011. So things can change. Some things change very fast. And some things just get worse and worse and worse along exactly the same trajectory they've been going all this time.
That makes me tie things back. Sorry to interrupt you, but that makes me tie things back to climate change.
Yes.
And, I was born in Ohio where the Cuyahoga River caught fire.
Yep.
Back in the day. Literally, the whole river caught fire. Mm-hmm. And they cleaned it up. There are things that we can do as a society, as a world, if we work together, if we acknowledge the problem, to fix things and make them better. Mm-hmm. We can do this. Mm-hmm. That doesn't mean that, there aren't really serious climate problems right now that we may or may not be able to fix, but we should try.
Yes, we should try.
and we can accomplish some things. Mm-hmm. Is it okay to talk about the Barbie movie now, Driftglass?
Well, as the designated
I'm asking my husband if it's okay.
Yes, as the designated representative of the patriarchy, I usually this would have to go to a conference call with the other heads of the patriarchy, but I think I can speak for them all when I say, "Oh hell no!"
Yeah,
but
right.
You know what? Women gonna be doing whatever they want to do, so
well,
go ahead.
The patriarchy is a character in this movie for sure, and I'm sure everyone who wants to hear about the Barbie movie has heard about the Barbie movie enough. Mm-hmm. I did write a post for Crooks and Liars about it,
yes.
Which I ended with Ben Shapiro looks beautiful when he's mad.
Yes, he should smile more. He should really smile
more. I didn't say that, but he should smile more. I did not know about Ben Shapiro's violent reaction to the Barbie movie until Youngest Child let me know. And Youngest Child apparently monitors Ben Shapiro because Ben Shapiro went after Beyonce and Ben Shapiro went after Nicki Minaj. And Ben Shapiro goes after a lot of people, Black women singers, that Youngest Child really likes.
Yes.
And is part of the fandom of those singers. Yes. And so when the fandom reacts, that falls into Youngest Child's world of media. They see that, and Youngest Child sees that and is aware of it, much more than I am.
So what you're saying is Ben Shapiro is her David Brooks. I
don't know if that's the case. But what I am saying is that Youngest Child's the one that told me, Ben Shapiro set fire to Barbies and Ben Shapiro just can't stand this movie. Mm-hmm. And so that meant we had to go see it.
Obviously. I wasn't invited.
So, no, you were not invited. It was Youngest Child, Middle Child, and I went. Middle Child wore all black. Youngest Child wore a T-shirt from Sarah Squirm, which is the T-shirt line of the Saturday Night Live comedian who's always giving Colin Jost such a hard time.
Oh, and was that the one I saved?
Yes, that you saved by doing laundry, and it had a sticker residue on it, and you very carefully laundered it and got the sticker residue off.
I removed it by hand, like an architect.
A very expensive T-shirt.
I'm the Indiana Jones of cleaning up T-shirts. I got my little brush out and my little cloth.
Yeah, you were really you carefully took care of that. But Youngest Child wore that, and I wore pink, and we all went, and we went to the 10 a.m. Sunday show because the afternoon shows on Sunday were clearly almost sold out, and we wanted to sit together, so we went to the first show in Springfield.
Yeah,
in Springfield, and it's funny because when we arrived at the theater, there were people taking their little 5 and 6 year old daughters into the theater. Yeah. And Youngest Child turned to me and said, "Do they know this movie is rated PG-13?" Which was the first sign that this wasn't going to be a movie about the way the trailer portrays it of Barbie and Ken go into the real world and have hijinks. That there was going to be something slightly more to it.
May I interrupt in just one way? One of the movie review podcasts I listen to, which is The Watch, which is Chris Ryan and Andy Greenwald, and it's very good, and I listen to it. And Andy Greenwald copped immediately today, or the most recent ones, I was wrong. I reversed myself 180 degrees. I based all of my, oh God, this is going to be another product, pimping, horrible thing based on the trailer. I thought it was the trailer. And it took me about 10 or 15 minutes in the movie to go, oh, we're doing this. Oh,
we're doing this.
Oh, this is
doing this.
Yeah. And he loves it. And, I've heard nothing but positive reviews, but it was the way it was marketed.
The way it was marketed was to get everyone to go see it because the market for Barbie and Ken go into the real world and have hijinks. Summer fun movie.
Sure.
Totally unchallenging in every way is what gets the crowds to go to the movies. And I have not heard a wellspring of moms come out and say, I took my daughter to this and this was totally the wrong message for me. Now, maybe I'm not in the right Facebook circles or next door circles to hear that, but everyone seemed to be having a wonderful time at the theater we were at.
Yeah.
And it is a very political movie. And I'm not going to do spoilers on it, but it is a political movie. And a little heavy-handed as a political movie, but not terribly so. And I'm not going to say the last line of the movie, but I will tell you the last line of this movie is the most subversive thing I've seen in movies in my memory. So I do recommend that you get a ticket and go see it.
Yeah.
My bladder will not hold out for 3 hours of Oppenheimer, and I don't want to miss any of Oppenheimer, so I am going to wait until there's a pause button that I can push. I want to see it. I'm a fan of that director, and I think it's probably important to see it.
Mm-hmm.
But 3 hours is too long for me to sit, even in a reclining seat.
we'll just watch it on your phone. You know, I'm sure we'll get the effect of it if you just hold it real close to your face.
I remember when David Lynch, director of not too good Dune movie, but also The Amazing Blue Velvet, talked
Amazing
about
director.
Watching movies on their phone. If you get a chance to go look that up on YouTube, David Lynch on watching a movie on your phone, he has words about that.
Yeah, not a fan. Not a fan. Really, really, really not a fan.
It's like, hey, David Lynch, let's watch a movie on my phone.
I have not seen Barbie. I would certainly never spoil it. The things I heard it not compared to, or in my mind, it sounded like, in some element, it's like Elf. There is a fantasy world and a real world, and there's a way to get from one to the other. And in some ways, it's Some Like It Hot. It really is an incredibly subversive movie.
Yep.
Once you start figuring out what's really going on here, it's like, holy shit.
Yep.
And part of it is very aware of itself. And part of it is The Wizard of Oz. You know, a bit of like, you know, you've left one world and entered another. And that's all I'll say, other than like, I'm sold. I love all those movies. Do you make them into a whole big thing and make them a feminist political thing by Greta Gerwig? I'm there. Yeah. I'm all the way in. So once they start letting dudes see this movie, I'll go see it.
Driftglass, let's do a news roundup.
Okay. Oh, you want to start with some good news?
Yeah, the Bidening continues, folks.
Yes.
Teamsters UPS union wins historic contract avoiding massive nationwide strike. Thank goodness. Thank goodness.
Unions, baby.
The Teamsters got this contract. It's amazing because the strike would have been economically devastating to a whole lot of people. We've changed the game, the Teamsters tweeted. The agreement was unanimously endorsed by the union's negotiating committee because they pretty much got what they wanted. It will be voted on by members early next month. The new contract guarantees a $2.75 per hour wage increase this year and a $7.50 per hour increase over the life of the contract. The new minimum pay for part-time workers will be $21 an hour, effective immediately.
That's wonderful. That is wonderful.
The contract will keep UPS Teamsters the highest paid delivery drivers in the United States. Pay attention to that, Amazon. People can leave you and go drive for UPS. The contract also includes guaranteed health and safety promises, safety and health protections, including vehicle air conditioning, cargo ventilation. UPS will equip in-cab air conditioning in all larger delivery vehicles, Sprinter vans, and package cars purchased after January 1st, 2024. All cars get 2 fans and air induction vents in the cargo compartments, and they are putting limits on the number and use of driver-facing cameras, so they're not spying on their employees anymore.
Right.
That was very important.
One of the people I follow on my civilian Facebook page, a local union thug, who's it's always great. It's always a reminder that everything you have is thanks to unions. So, but it was a 2-shot of a, Jim's van the day before the strike. Jim's a UPS, and it's a well-ordered back of a truck with all the packages laid out neatly, and everything is in good order and ready to be delivered. And then Jim's supervisor's van the day after, and it's the same van with just like packages dumped in sideways, upside down, complete chaos, because it's the laborers who do all that stuff.
Exactly.
It's the laborers that make all that possible, that make all those things come to your door like magic. It's those hardworking, especially on a day like this. It's heat index, we've mentioned already, 115 outside, and driving middle child to work. I saw delivery trucks doing delivery work. I saw yard workers doing yard work. I saw the working men and women of Springfield out there making the rest of our lives bearable and comfortable.
Right.
So unions, hell yeah. And pay them every nickel they're worth. Because, if they had shut down, Jesus. I mean,
Well, think about it. Think about all of the people that depend on getting packages out. People order online all the time now. That is just part of life. You order groceries online, you order cleaning supplies online. That's just how you shop a lot of the time.
sometimes you get your
And
medicine
small
online.
businesses
Oh,
do
yeah.
a lot of their, we order our bumper stickers online. They're shipped to us via UPS. Whatever you get, those kind of small businesses depend on that for their inventory to move. So it's just so important. And so, and I do think, Biden didn't take any of the credit for this, but boy, when there's a pro-union president in the White House, that has to have an impact on, let's just make this easy for everybody.
Yeah. Let's
fix it. And I love those articles that have posited what would happen if CEOs were replaced by AI versus truck drivers.
Nothing.
CEOs, many of them can be replaced by an AI. How's the stock price today? Oh,
easily.
What can I do to keep it at that price or raise it 1 cent? That's their entire being. What's the stock price today? So, right. Yeah.
Now, the next story is probably someone who could use a union rep, but doesn't have one because he is in deep shit. By the way, one quick union story. I had a person working for me a long time ago, worked for the state of Chicago, was the worst person I ever had working for me. Was completely non-performing, made excuses all the time, would come in late. I had to actually call him at home to wake him up because he kept saying, I just can't get out of bed. I can't do it. I did everything I could, moving heaven and earth to save his job. And he was fighting me every inch of the way, fucking up. I give him a project that should last 3 days. 2 weeks later, he hasn't started yet because I didn't know I was allowed to use the internet to look things up, says the guy who works in the tech unit, who's got a stack of paper on his desk about railroads that he's been researching from his desk. Anyway.
For fun. That's his hobby.
For fun. Well, I couldn't remember the number. Write it down. I have carpal tunnel syndrome. I can't write anything down. Well, could you copy and paste it? And he just stare at me like a dog who's been watching a card trick, like, I don't know what that means. So, and I found out
that he slept at his desk too, didn't he?
He was just an awful, and he'd been rehired by the guy I replaced. And the guy I replaced used to say, we don't have to worry about so-and-so in front of him. We don't have to worry about firing him. He'll be dead of a heart attack soon.
Oh, wow.
That was the situation I walked into and had to clean up. And the guy who had preceded me had never written him up. His personnel folder was empty. He never a complaint because it was too much trouble or whatever. I don't know what. But I had to go through the whole process with this guy. And the union rep in my shop, who should have been, my natural adversary, except I liked her and I respected what she did, had to sit with him and say, dude, this guy is trying to save your job. What about that don't you understand? And she was just, he's giving you everything. He's a goddamn alarm clock. He'll call you in the morning and he'll give you the easiest assignments to do. And you're what's wrong with you? And you could just tell she was incredibly frustrated because her job is to protect his job.
Right.
And he was making it impossible to do. And I was doing so much more for him than he deserved. And it really got to be silly after a while. Anyway, moving on to Rudy Giuliani.
Did you ever fire that person eventually?
No, he was transferred to a different department. It was one flight down. He spent his time, it wasn't in the IT department, it was like some adjacent department. He spent his time like hanging over the partition in the IT department's guys, telling them what to do and telling them stories about the good old days and not getting a fucking thing done. And eventually they fired him. But it was just like, dude, you have been gifted because your former boss, the guy I replaced, who actually let you go the first time, found this guy working at a cab stand, felt sorry for him, rehired him, and then just treated him like shit for like 12 years.
Yeah.
And then I show up trying to figure out what the hell's going on here. Everybody in the department hates him because they have to do all his work. And the guy in charge is like, can't be doing, nothing can be done. Nothing can ever be done about anything. Anyway, I've always had good relations with unions I worked with. I was in a union at Columbia College. And so, the opportunity to join a union of bloggers and podcasters would be very welcome. Anyway, on to Rudy Giuliani, who conceded this week that he made false and defamatory statements that 2 Georgia election workers had mishandled ballots while counting votes in Atlanta during the 2020 election. Although Giuliani is no longer contesting the accusations by Ruby Freeman and Shay Moss, he bafflingly continues to argue that his false claims were constitutionally protected speech and didn't damage the women. Another guy who I would like to see in jail until they have to bury him on the grounds.
He was probably drunk at the time that he did one of those two things.
Yeah.
Either admitting he lied. Oh, I'll just admit I lied, and then I won't have to give over any of my documents.
Yeah. There you go. That's a strategy.
But these two black women are still SOL because I didn't hurt them in any way. Look, they're on TV now.
Right. Yeah.
Thanks to me. No.
That whole cabal of people are the weirdo Nazis in the bunker at the end of the Third Reich. Drunks, drug addicts, perverts, and lunatics.
Seriously. When you listen to Lev Parnas talk about them, and not that Lev Parnas isn't an ex-con himself, but some of these people who were inside that circle and got out, Lev Parnas just talked. Rudy was drunk all the time. He was always looking for free liquor. He was a constant just boil on the butt of everybody because he was there to drink.
Right.
And of course, and lie and happy to lie and doesn't care who he hurts. He thinks everything he does is a victimless crime because he's just working for Trump. Hunter Biden, this was, the story this week. He pleaded not guilty to federal tax charges after the judge refused to accept the terms of his initial plea deal. This is a little bit of a mess, and it reminds me that Jack Smith knows exactly what he's charging people with and when.
Yes, he does.
This is a long story.
It's a misunderstanding.
Yeah.
There was a misunderstanding between the judge and the prosecutor and the defense attorney about what had been agreed to.
Right.
And the judge said, until you get this shit straightened out about who promised who what, get back to me with the plea deal when we work all that out. Yeah.
And the judge has a problem with linking a tax charge with a gun charge. And I understand that.
Yeah.
They're not the same thing. So, he's going to plead not guilty for the time being. He's expected to reverse that plea if the new agreement meets the judge's approval. So 30 days. That we'll know again in 30 days.
And Joe Biden's not going to pardon him. And he's not going to interfere. This is the justice system working as it should. But
this is Biden's Justice Department.
Right. Doing
what they're supposed to do.
Go back and do it right, and then we'll talk. And of course, if you change to Fox or Newsmax, this is the story that your crazy Uncle Liberty is hearing wall to wall. It's the greatest crime in American history. Joe Biden is deeply implicated and must be impeached because something.
And Maria Bartiromo was recalling names of Biden cabinet members this morning and then saying they needed to be impeached.
Yeah.
So she'd be like, Jennifer Granholm, that's it.
Impeach that bitch.
She needs to be impeached.
Yeah. Well, and in my mind, it's Maria Fart Aroma. So, that's because I have
that's terrible.
I know I slayed with that humor in fourth grade. Okay.
Oh, in fourth grade. Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Now this story, I love this story because it's so dumb and weird and it involves UFOs. And I just had to put it in our news roundup because it made me smile. Because this is the kind of crackpot weirdness we should be having. Mm-hmm. This is as weird as...
This is where the crackpots should be talking to each other. Right. Yes.
I'm talking to... Yeah, Charlie Pierce has a wonderful book. It's from a few years ago called Idiot America, How Stupidity Became a Virtue in the Land of the Free. And it's well-researched and it's wonderful. And Charlie Pierce is a hell of a writer. He's one of the writers I look up to as a role model. Don't tell him that because he'll get a big head. But I do.
So the UFO story.
But the UFO story is where is the proper venue for that kind of crackpottery. It should be up there with Atlantis and the Masonic temples and stuff like that. The weird stuff that shouldn't influence politics in any way. Should have no place in American politics. But here's the story. A former national intelligence officer turned whistleblower testified that the U.S. is concealing a long-standing program that retrieves and reverse engineers UFOs. If so, where's my fucking flying car? Dave Grush appeared before the House Oversight Committee's National Security Subcommittee alongside two former fighter pilots who had firsthand experience with unidentified anomalous phenomena, a phrase the federal government uses to refer to what are commonly known as UFOs. I'm willing to believe There are things in the sky that we can't explain and that might represent some sort of machine that we can't understand and that does things that we can't do currently. But he goes on. Grush told lawmakers that during his work with the UAP task force, he was denied access to a UAP crash retrieval and reverse engineering program that had existed for decades. He added that the U.S. likely had been aware of, quote, non-human activities since the 1930s and claimed the government had recovered, quote, non-human biologics from crashed UAPs. The defense, now remember, non-human could be a dog.
Mm-hmm.
It could be a monkey. It could be a rabbit they send into orbit. It doesn't mean...
It could be a COVID virus.
It could be the Andromeda strain.
Yeah, it could be
a whole lot of things.
Little one-celled creature in a star someplace. Yeah.
And I'm a science fiction lover, and I'm willing to believe a lot of stuff, but you got to show me something other than this guy talking about, I wasn't allowed to see all this stuff, but I know it's there. The Defense Department, meanwhile, said it, quote, has not discovered any verifiable information to substantiate claims that any programs regarding the possession or reverse engineering of extraterrestrial materials have existed in the past or exist currently. But perhaps they exist in the future, Blue Gal. Huh? Did they
what
deny
about that?
And they time traveled. Huh? But again,
my whistleblower on that is missing. I don't know where he is.
Right. He was taken into the past and killed by a Tyrannosaurus Rex. And that's why Trump is president, because we're on the wrong fucking timeline. Thank you, Ray Bradbury, and A Sound of Thunder. That was your science fiction moment by yours truly, Driftglass.
Kevin McCarthy suggested that House Republicans may pursue an impeachment inquiry into Biden. The White House, meanwhile, said House Republicans' eagerness to go after Biden, regardless of the truth, is seemingly bottomless. Instead of focusing on the real issues Americans want us to address, like continuing to lower inflation or create jobs, this is what they want to prioritize. Then Kevin McCarthy went into private conference with House Republicans and said, you might want to back off on this impeachment inquiry until you've got some evidence.
Uh-huh.
And then James Comer went out before the press and said, this is so mean and unfair that the press is expecting evidence from us.
Right. And then he brought out a magic 8-ball and said, look, we've asked it, and it says.
Signs point to yes.
So come on, people. It's right there. The truth is out there, people. Meanwhile, Nancy Pelosi, who is still serving in the House and having a hell of a time, I would imagine, accused Kevin McCarthy of playing politics with the idea of expunging Trump's two impeachments, saying he's, quote, afraid and, quote, looks pathetic, both of which are factually true. Pelosi added, quote, as I've said before, Donald Trump is the puppeteer, and what does he do all of the time but shine the light on the strings? Yep.
Joe Biden will establish a national monument honoring Emmett Till and his mother, Mamie Till Mobley. The monument will consist of 3 protected sites in Illinois and Mississippi, central to the story of Till's life and death at age 14.
Yeah.
Governor Pritzker had a tweet about this, and the replies were horrible.
Oh, yeah, no. Every time he tweets about anything. Yeah.
Horrible. And
No.
I have a knitting friend who comes over on Wednesday afternoon, knits with me. We watch TV shows. We watch dumb TV shows and knit together. And she lived in Arkansas for many years, and she said there was a Emmett Till statuary or honorific or whatever it was, something for Emmett Till in Arkansas. It got shot up.
Mm-hmm.
Emmett Till gets shot up today in 2023.
Mm-hmm. Well, anytime J.B. Pritzker tweets about anything, the comments are horrifying.
Yeah. Well, he's got trolls complaining about Chicago crime who are not from Chicago or anywhere near Illinois.
Mm-hmm.
And some of that you just have to brush off. And that's, I got, my attention drawn to these awful tweets about Emmett Till because one of Pritzker's staff members who I follow said, I've seen some bad stuff in my day working for J.B. Pritzker, the replies of stuff. I've never seen anything like this.
Yeah, well.
And she attributed it to Elon Musk allowing Nazis and racists and, anybody who wants to come on and say, whatever Emmett Till did, I'm sure he deserved it. Whatever was done to Emmett Till, I'm sure he deserved it.
Yeah. Well, And as we've said before,
Garbage people, in other words.
if you want to know about how Republicans out here in the real world really are, do not ask Charlie Sykes. Do not ask David Brooks. Do not ask anyone on the New York Times op-ed page. Ask the fucking liberals who live out here in the real world with them. And we will tell you, which is why we're never surprised about the Republican Party, the trajectory it's on and what sort of weirdness it does and how fast it gets horrible and how it's not a fever that's going to break. This is who they are because we've lived with these people our entire lives and we know who they really are. So don't listen to the people who tell you the fantasy you want to hear.
Yep.
Moving on. Florida Governor Ron DeSantis suggested that black people benefited from slavery by learning skills like, quote, being a blacksmith, which they applied to, quote, doing things later in life. You know, when they got that full retirement on a pension and could just have hobbies like everyone knows, you know, slaves did.
Florida is just fucked right now. It just is.
It is.
And Ron DeSantis had to fire a Nazi on his staff.
He did. So
this
sad.
week. Surprised you have a Nazi on your staff.
Uh-huh.
It turns out that lots of Republicans have Nazis on their staff, and this has been going on for a long time.
Weird. So weird.
You know,
so
this
a weird
young man, he's got a great future. He looks so good in a suit. Oops, he's a Nazi.
Yeah. Don't worry. You know, if you and I learned anything from the tale of Ben Dominic, it's that the prominent up-and-coming young conservative will find the fastest jet stream to getting ahead. And in the Republican Party, it's be a fucking Nazi, be a Klansman, be the most awful racist scumbag you can, and your future is secure. And, you know, what kind of hollow, broken asshole that's raised by God knows who thinks, my goal in life is to get into the White House with a Republican ticket. And if that means I have to travel all the way up Donald Trump's alimentary canal and live there, then I'll do it because I don't have a conscience. I don't care. But, you know, remember Ben, good old Ben got fired from the Washington Post, and the Republican Party, the Andrew Breitbart conservative movement, found money to put in his pockets and found award money for his pocket and found a couple of think tanks to keep him, you know, employed and eating. And then they moved him on to the Federalist. And then he started becoming Chris Hayes' favorite conservative on MSNBC. And Chris Hayes would have him on go, you know, we disagree a lot, Ben, but you and I, we're good buddies because we come from the same background, we have the same cohort, and they would just have these jolly conversations. And Ben Dominic used his credentials that he got from Chris Hayes and other people on MSNBC about the same age to promote his career, to get a job at CBS. And he was on CBS for a number of years. And then the mask came off and he became the Ben Dominic we all knew he was. But there will always be a place for these people on the right. And I don't blame them for being who they are. I blame the people in the middle, the nice people who want to rehabilitate them, who just want to have a civilized conversation about both sides for falling for this bullshit over and over and over again.
I wonder if Ben Dominic embraced all the bullshit because Meghan McCain told him she had to go to a prayer breakfast.
I probably. I'm sure she dashed out of that bedroom as fast as she could for some reason. I can't figure out what it might be, but you know, it's just those two. It really they're sort of Madeline and Carville without, you know, any dissonance between them. They're both just horrible parasitic scum. And they found each other. And of course, we're going to get her a job. What, on The View? She was on The View for a while.
Yeah, for a long time.
Yeah, so, you know, there's always money and work and jobs and available sinecures and op-eds for these people. Always. And it doesn't matter how far they fall. Eventually, this guy who Ron DeSantis fired will bounce back. And then he'll have a comeback story. And he'll end up on the national. He used to write for the National Review, as I recall. So, you know, it's just bad, and it's always been bad, and it's getting worse. And
let's cut it there and move on to Alabama Republicans defying a Supreme Court order to create a second majority black district in the state. It's too hard, Driftglass. They can't do it.
Supreme Court rulings are optional. So
yeah, for Republicans they are. Yeah. Yes. Last month, the Supreme Court ruled that the state's previous district line marginalized the state's black population in violation of the Voting Rights Act. But violating the Voting Rights Act is what we're good at, says the Alabama legislature.
Yeah.
They were not able somehow to create a second district with a black majority or something quite close to it to give black voters an opportunity to elect a representative of their choice. Instead, the Republican-controlled legislature approved a new map with just one majority black seat and dared the Supreme Court to do something about it.
Right. I'm reminded of the line by Joseph Stalin about how many divisions does the Pope have?
Yeah, right.
You know, the Supreme Court doesn't have an army. They don't have tanks. They don't have guns. They can't force people to do anything. So, you know, remember that all of those states that are putting in 6-week abortion bans because Roe versus Wade was overturned, Roe versus Wade wasn't overturned. It didn't count because Supreme Court rulings mean nothing. That's all being done voluntarily by those states because whatever. I'm about to go down a rabbit hole, and I'd rather not go down it because I'll start talking in mean voice. So I'll just say the Justice Department, the Biden Justice Department, has sued Texas and Governor Greg Abbott for building floating barriers in the Rio Grande.
Yeah, with razor wire on them to kill children.
Yep.
Ron DeSantis isn't having a very good week, Driftglass. He's now leaning hard into his military service. Yeah, you know, good old rough-rotting Ron DeSantis here. His 2024 campaign is seeking altitude, he said.
Yeah. Well, if I'm going to give Donald Trump one free piece of advice, it's this. One of Ron DeSantis' jobs apparently was a urologist. And, you know, while, and if you can't figure out a way to make a joke out of Ron DeSantis playing with urine, playing with pee, Ron P. Santis or something like that, you're not trying there, Don. You're not really trying.
He is the only veteran in the GOP presidential field. But even those who admire his service aren't sure that it will help him beat Donald Trump, who, you know, liked people who weren't shot down.
I don't know if you remember this. In Illinois, there was a guy named Joe Walsh.
Yeah.
A shouty
He's
cracker,
still
deadbeat
around.
lunatic. He is.
He's still around, Driftglass.
And his congressional opponent was a woman named Tammy Duckworth.
Tammy Duckworth.
And Joe Walsh dealt with her military record by saying, you know, real heroes don't talk about their military service, but that's all she talks about.
As she's wheeled in, having lost a leg serving her country. Both legs.
Real heroes like John McCain don't make a big deal about their service. No, there was 2 fucking movies made about it, but okay, sure, that's fine. But, you know, and he's like, you know, this woman's no hero because she talks about her military service. That's Joe Walsh.
She's no hero because she got a Purple Heart, right?
Yeah. And then he lost to her, and then he lost his mind.
He lost
then he went on
badly
Fox.
to her.
Yeah, he did.
And she had no problem getting reelected last time.
And now she's our senator. So
she is our senator, and her daughter is like 4.5.
Yes.
I knit a sweater for her daughter when her daughter was a baby.
Yes.
And I got to meet up with her last election cycle, and she told me, "No, that child is 4 now." And I went, "That's not possible."
Oh no!
They grow up too fast. Anyway. Each week we post to our Facebook page and website an Internet Kitty sent in by you listeners. This week's Internet Kitty is Morgan Le Fay. Miss Le Fay comes from a feral colony near the Canadian border, but we don't hold that against her.
No.
She was socialized in a foster home. Again, she's still royalty.
Well, Canadian socialism, so what do you want, you know?
She was actually raised in a home that had dogs and children, so she is unfazed by anything. She has it all going on. And of course, Morgan Le Fay eats freshly poured cat food, our fake sponsor. Whether you serve pet store perfection or dollar store direct, your cats will sit on the kitchen floor and demand that the food they eat is only freshly poured.
Freshly poured, freshly poured. Oh my Lord, it's freshly poured.
And you can visit Morgan Le Fay at our Facebook page or website. And you can send your Internet Kitty, dog, or other pet to us at our email address, proleftpodcast@gmail.com. Or you can also write to both of us. Feel free to write us. We love hearing from you. Be aware that if you write to us at any of our addresses, we reserve the right to read your email or U.S. Postal Service. Go Postal Unions. Letter on the air unless you say otherwise. And do stay safe, Postal Union members, in this heat. We are thinking about you.
Mm-hmm.
Don't forget our gourmet coffee guideline. If you can afford to buy an espresso-based beverage for yourself, buy one for us. Iced coffees are good too. This is not charity. This is our job. And we love doing this podcast.
Mm-hmm.
Please share our show on social media. And if you love this podcast, please get someone else to listen to. Thank you for doing that. Driftglass, how are the Internet Kitties doing this week?
Blue Gal, the Internet Kitties would very much like to know when Blissa, Barbie's cat, will get her own movie. Origin story, background, a whole thing. Come on, people.
Let's think about living. Think about living. Let's think about loving. Think about loving. Let's think about the hooping and the hopping and the bopping and the loving, loving, loving. Let's forget about the wine and the crying, the shooting and the dying, and the fellow with the switchblade knife. Let's think about living. Let's think about life.
A Professional Left podcast is recorded under a Creative Commons license. Copyright 2023 DGBG Productions.